Whenever we go through hard times, such as the current pandemic in our world, or financial troubles, illness, the loss of a loved one, we sometimes wonder, where is God in all of this? Well, what I would like to talk about this morning, or today, whatever time you're watching this video, is finding God. There's a Catholic summer camp in a place called Big Sandy, Texas, in northeast Texas, and it's called the Pines Catholic Camp. And they have a beautiful practice in that camp, and it's called God Sightings. What they do toward the end of each day is they gather the campers together, and they invite any of the kids who want to tell the group how they saw the presence of God in that day. And so the campers will mention different things that point out to them something of the presence of God. For example, maybe they saw a beautiful, colorful Texas sunset. Or maybe they observed the intricate beauty of a tiny, delicate flower. Or maybe they heard the beautiful song of the mockingbird, and they appreciated the beauty of those things. Or maybe one of them says, well, today I slipped and fell, and my friend helped me to get up. And I saw God in my friend's help to me. And so they train the campers in that summer camp to be attentive to signs of the presence of God. So where is God? God's not just up in some far-removed heavenly abode. God is everywhere. God fills every cubic inch of the entire universe. That means that God is right there by your side every day. And God gives us little subtle signs of His presence. It's just that we're not always attentive enough to observe those signs. Way back about 2,000 years ago on the Sea of Galilee, on their boat, the apostles of Jesus had a great God sighting that day. Jesus came walking to them on top of the water. Can you imagine what that must have been like for them to see Jesus, their Lord, their Master, walking on top of the water? It would be pretty amazing. And after it was all over, they told Jesus, truly, you are the Son of God. It's easy to have a God sighting with fantastic, spectacular things, like somebody walking on water, or perhaps a flash of lightning, or going on a powerful retreat, or some once-in-a-lifetime pilgrimage, or something like that. But it takes an attentive eye to have a God sighting in the unspectacular, simple, humble, quiet, everyday moments of life. The prophet Elijah learned that in today's first reading from 1 Kings chapter 19. Elijah knew that God was going to make Himself present to him that day. He just wasn't quite sure how it was going to happen. And so he found that the Lord was not in the strong wind, or in the earthquake, or in the fire. The Lord revealed Himself to Elijah in a tiny, whispering sound. Elijah was observant enough to notice it. I'd like to share with you today a treasure from our Catholic spiritual tradition that helps us to become more aware of God's presence in every situation that we could find ourselves in. It's called the practice of the presence of God. And you can find it in a couple of books of classic Catholic spirituality. The first book is called The Practice of the Presence of God, and it was written by Brother Lawrence of the Resurrection. Brother Lawrence was a very active monk who worked for many years in the busy kitchen of a monastery in Paris, France, in the 17th century. And in all of the noisy, busy routine of that kitchen, Lawrence was able to feel the presence of God constantly. So how could he do that? As they were peeling potatoes or making soups or washing dishes or cleaning the floor, how is it that Brother Lawrence was able to notice the presence of God at all times? Well, he explains it in his book in some very simple practices that you and I can do also. So I'll summarize the practice of the presence of God according to Brother Lawrence. First of all, he says that you should talk lovingly to God in your heart at all times, just in the silence of your heart. Let your source of joy be your companionship with God. Next, let your every action be an action of communion with God, whether you're washing dishes or mopping the floor or whatever it is. Then he says, actually do your job, carrying out the active tasks of your work, but regularly take little moments of recollection. Take a brief pause and enjoy a few moments of the peace of God's presence. Just stop for a moment, take a little break in your heart, and worship God in the joy of your heart. He says, with each task that you take on, whatever are the duties of your day, as you're taking on each task, whenever you begin or continue or finish that action, you inwardly lift up your heart to God. And he recommends that you use simple interior expressions in your heart, just short little statements in the silence of your heart. Like, for example, I love you, Lord. I praise you. My God, I'm totally yours. O God of love, I love you with all my heart. Lord, make my heart like yours. Let your will be done. Holy Spirit, guide me. Lord, have mercy. Just little expressions like that are just peppered throughout your day. So those are the steps that Brother Lawrence of the Resurrection explains to us in his simple little book, The Practice of the Presence of God. It's nothing complicated. And that way of living is so profound and so important that it prompted St. Alphonsus of Liguori to say that the practice of the presence of God is the foundation of the spiritual life. Now, I remember I said that there were two books from the 17th century. They're both written in French, both translated into other languages. The second book is by a priest named Jean-Pierre de Caussade. Jean-Pierre de Caussade. And its original title is Abandonment to Divine Providence. And you can see that easily. When you're looking for it, you can find that title. It's also translated more recently into an easy-to-read translation that's called The Sacrament of the Present Moment. And that title really captures this whole way of living, the sacrament of the present moment. So you could read either of those books or both of them. They actually go well together in a little spiritual study that you could do. And I highly recommend both of those books. They're spiritually very fruitful. They help us to live always on the lookout for more God sightings. I encourage you to think about and talk about with others your little moments where you notice the presence of God in your own God sightings. For example, in your daily prayer, maybe some insight comes to you. Or for example, in doing your personal journal where you're writing, some insight becomes clear to you. So talk these things over with your friends, with your spouse, with your family, because when you live this way, you recognize that we are surrounded by God's presence wherever we go. He reveals himself to us every day if we will only open our eyes to notice him.